PowerPoint loaded up. So, Juanne, it is all yours.
Okay, well, thank you, Alex. I appreciate it. And to those of you who are joining, welcome. My apologies for the technical issues, but at least you see a picture there. And quite honestly, that probably looks a little bit better than what I have going on right now in quarantine land. So, welcome. I don't want to take a lot of your time, but I just do want to alert you of some good news. As you can see there, the title of my little talk, Human Resource Management, a New Major in a New Era. That's what I want to talk about. Just a little bit about myself. I am an assistant professor of management at Stetson. I primarily teach organizational behavior, some intro management courses, and human resource management courses now. And I have been at Stetson actually for a year, so I'm pretty brand new. I've been in Atlanta for a little while, and now I'm at Stetson and happy to be here and happy to share. So like I said, I want to talk about our new major, which is human resource management. It's exciting. We're launching it in the fall. And I'm going to talk about the major a bit, and then what I want to do is kind of talk a little bit about or set some context around the major. So I'll start with the big stuff of this, what we have going on, and then I'll take a little journey a little bit in terms of HR and where we're going from here, given our current reality. Okay, so. And here we go. Yep. There we go. All righty. Now, most of us, I believe, have heard of human resources. And so what I want to make sure we understand, I'm going to talk about the major, but let's just make sure we know what HR is, really. If you've worked or if you know someone who's worked, you've heard of an HR department. And typically we think of them as the folks that hire, fire, and pay us. That's about what we think of them. And HR in and of itself, human resource management in and of itself, is kind of an umbrella term for many, many different functions and practices and policies that go into figuring out everything that has to do with the workforce. And so that is the concept of, what do we need? What are the skills that we need? By when? And how do we get them into the organization, develop them, retain them, and ensure that they're contributing? And so that's like in a nutshell what HR is. And Stetson determined that this field is one that we wanted to enter into because of the richness there from an academic standpoint, that we could make sure that we can also make a contribution to industry. And we have the skill set to do that and to enable our graduates to do that. And so what we decided to do was launch our new human resource management program. So we're very excited about that. You can major in HR or you can minor in HR. And as you can see on the left-hand side, we are committed to ensuring that our graduates can hit the ground running. HR is an applied practice, if you will. So you don't do a whole lot of good if you graduate and you don't know what you're doing. And I think that's with most fields, but especially in HR. And so we are very much cognizant and aware and purposeful and ensure that we align with the competencies that are associated with the Society for Human Resource Management. That's SHRM. And SHRM is the organization that is associated with all things workforce related, if you will. It's our go-to to ensure that we are meeting the needs of industry. And so our program is designed to equip our graduates with the skills and competencies necessary to be active when they graduate, to build that business acumen. And that's one of the reasons why having the HR major in the School of Business is very critical. And to build the leadership skills and the interpersonal skills that are going to be necessary for them to be seen as knowledgeable on the job. And so with that, so what's required? I know you want to know. We have 6 courses. So on the left, you see there's 6 courses that are required for the major. And our human resource management course, that first course, is actually a course that we've had for a while. Students have been able to take that as an elective. And that ends up being our prerequisite for most all the other courses. So if you're going to major, you see it's a 32 credit hours, and you have 6 courses that are required. Our recruitment course is what it sounds like. It's a focus on recruitment action. And I'll say this now, if you go into human resources, you can be a generalist or you can be a specialist. And if you're looking at numbers 2 through 5 there, you can specialize in any of those areas. But in the recruitment course, you'll get a little bit more detail. Well, first of all, the HR course, of course, tells you what human resources is, and it introduces you into all the functions of HR. That recruitment course goes a little bit deeper and helps you to understand not only how to recruit and how to market a position, but essentially the bones and the science behind determining the needs of your workforce, the job analysis processes, the understanding what skills are going to be necessary and what timing. And so all that is included in that recruitment and selection process. What do we go do with succession planning? And so how do we build the workforce that's in that course? The employment law course, I'm very excited about this course actually, is law, obviously, but the employee-employer relationship is one that is very dynamic and delicate at the same time. And understanding the law, regulations, and the federal laws that are associated with employees and protection of employees is very important, regardless of if you're an employment lawyer or not. So HR professionals have to understand, at the very least, what is required in those areas. So even if you don't practice law, employment law, you do have to understand what and how to protect employees in terms of the federal laws. That fourth requirement is managing employee performance and learning. That's a mouthful, first of all, but it's a course that actually combines two different elements of HR. The first, managing employee performance, is more about performance management in the regards to ensuring that you know how employees are contributing to the organization. So you might have heard of, and this is just one piece of it, but you might have heard of a performance appraisal. That's in that. So how are we measuring performance and how are we ensuring that there's contribution? The learning aspect is more of the development. And so some people back in the day might have referred to this as training, but that's also in this course. So how do we ensure that our employees are contributing to the organizations in the way that we think they should, and how do they continue that from a development standpoint? That fifth course, compensation and benefits, has a lot going on, because compensation and benefits, you can actually be a compensation specialist or you can be a benefits specialist, or sometimes they marry the two in some organizations. But this particular course will get you into the nuts and bolts of that. There's compensation plans and how organizations determine the way to incentivize their employees, the different benefit options that are required by law versus those that end up being like perks. You'd be amazed at what's required versus not. And so that particular course and specialists in that area are always well sought after, but you'll understand more of how organizations choose the comp and benefits plans that they have. So that's the 5 courses that are in each of the disciplines. And then you get to the 6th course, and that's our strategic HR management course, and that's the capstone for the major. And this course is going to be pretty cool because we'll have a simulation that will allow students to integrate, if you will, all of the previous learnings from the other courses, right? And so in the simulation, you will be in the position of an HR manager and, able to make decisions based upon some real world problems that are inherent in the particular simulation that we're going to use. And so that'll be pretty cool. But what's important is that it's giving you practice on what you would be able to do and will be called to do in the various roles as an HR professional. And so that, I think, is going to be very useful. Now, for an HR major, in addition to the 6 required courses, you also have an HR elective. And we have probably about 13 or so electives that you can choose from in different areas, actually. So we have a psychology course, we have a few sales courses, definitely some management courses, a course in project management, we have an entrepreneurship course. So different courses in different areas, and you can have one HR elective in addition to an HR internship. And this is exciting as well. For those of you who do not know, if you're a in the School of Business, if you're a major, a management major, or actually just a business major, there is a requirement, it's an ELR, it's experiential learning requirement. You have 2 of those, and an internship can fulfill part of that requirement. And so as an HR major, you would be taking an HR internship, and that would go towards the ELR requirement. And so that works out really well. Now, for those of you who are wondering, internships, are we still doing those? You do know we've in a pandemic. Well, the answer is yes. Two sides to look at that. One, there are organizations that are still doing virtual internships. Well, quite a few of our interns this summer have been able to continue their experiences, but virtually. Organizations are recognizing, the different ways they could still add value and provide that particular opportunity to their students. And then on our side, we are, from Stetson's standpoint, actually seeking out opportunities, and we're calling them micro internships for our students. So either way, whether we continue to do a little bit of sheltering in place type of thing, or we continue to move forward past the pandemic, there will still be internship opportunities for our students. Okay, so that was a lot in a little bit of time. So are there any questions on this so far? Okay, so the minor, you see there, it's just basically 16 credit hours, so there are only 3 required courses. The wonderful thing about the School of Business is that we've kind of reconfigured our curriculum to allow students more flexibility in their choice of majors and minors, and particularly the minors. So there's more flexibility for the additional electives, and in that you can take courses that are of interest to you and essentially, create a minor for yourself. And so that HR, you can minor in that. And the first 2 courses that are required are HR and recruitment and selection, and then you would choose one of the remaining for your course, and then you would still have the selection of HR electives to have your elective, and that you'd be able to minor. Okay, did I see a question? Alex, am I missing a question?
Yeah, we just had one pop up from Will. He asked, excuse me, are there any courses that specialize in HRIS or technology behind HR, SAP, Workday, etc.?
That is an excellent question, Will, because that's actually an avenue that HR has to understand, big data and the analytics. And we have in our stats major, in our stats department, a course that's an elective course that kind of gets you in that direction. We discussed it in the HR course, the Human Resource Management course, and we discussed it a little bit in the Recruitment and Selection course. But then specifics in terms of how the back data stuff works, and you can tell that I'm not a specialist in that, but that is in one of our BSAN courses, and you can take that as an elective and have that additional knowledge to bring to the table. Did that answer your question? I'm hoping, Will. Thank you, Will. Okay, all righty. So overall, I think that if I were to kind of describe the major, great, thanks, Will. If I were to describe the major, and this is, a characteristic of the majority of the majors, particularly in the School of Business, but certainly at Stetson overall, just because of our value that we place on applied learning. The program offers opportunities for applied practice, and so that is in the classroom most definitely. Our classes are highly engaging, and even in this particular environment that we're in now, we are going to be offering what we're calling hybrid flex courses to ensure that there's still a level of engagement as best as we can in most of our courses. And so the applied practice and the learning will occur obviously in the classroom, also with the internships, but we also have opportunities because we have wonderful industry experts and practitioners that are affiliated with our school that are wanting to be engaged with our students and are very excited about that. And so we will, our students will have the opportunity to interact with these individuals, and it'll be an experience that will be very valuable to get that kind of expertise in learning and education from those that are working in it and have been successful in it. So that's a part of it. And then also, as we continue to build the major, we'll eventually start a student organization, a campus version of SHRM, the Society for Human Resource Management, and that will open up the opportunity to do case competitions and kind of put Stetson on the map of HR education. So that'll be fun as well, and it'll be really cool for the students to kind of build that, because it's a student organization, to build that for us, and that'll be fun. That'll be really fun. Okay, and so that is, in a nutshell, what the major is about and what the focus of the major is. Any questions? Okay, now I've worked in HR for a little hot minute, and it was obviously not during a pandemic. So the question of what is HR and what is HR now? What is HR to become? We got this thing going on that obviously we're all aware of, and I've talked about in general what HR is typically, usually. Well, what is, given the pandemic and COVID-19, what's the role of HR now? What role do they play now? And the answer kind of lies in this particular quote from Dr. Gubman, who wrote this in the Journal of Business Strategy. He said, the basic mission of HR will always be to acquire, develop, and retain talent, to align the workforce with the business, and to be an excellent contributor to the business. Those three things will never change. And quite frankly, I believe that Dr. Gubman is exactly right. That looks very similar to what I said human resource management is. He wrote that in 1993. It hasn't changed. What needs to be the focus for HR is the strategic component. So you see here, I've kind of defined strategic human resource management, which is a future-oriented process, and it's evolving. It deals with HR programs that focus specifically on business problems and contributing to long-term business objectives. Now, strategic HR is not new. It's just something that if HR hadn't been doing it to this point, they certainly have to do it now in our current reality. And so what I want to do is walk through a little bit some of the, I guess, opinions of those that are talking about HR in the context of the pandemic, and then I want to walk through some examples, okay? So as we talk about HR in the context of COVID, the HR magazine said this. They said that the pandemic itself has elevated the importance of HR professionals within organizations as never before. It goes on to say that while there was a time where HR had to potentially convince leaders that they needed to be a part of key decisions, now those leaders are going to the HR almost every day because they understand what value that HR brings, and they are the ones that are going to essentially assist in making sure organizations are back on track. The CEO of SHRM said that CEOs are counting on our speed, and our, meaning HR professionals, are counting on our speed, our expertise, and our creativity in reshaping the workplace for resistance and recovery. And then you see here, Mr. Steve Pascott, HR lead of Spencer Stuart, and Spencer Stuart is a global recruitment and leadership consulting firm. He says that this is HR's leadership moment. And so I could pull out quotes from all kinds of resources talking about the value of HR, particularly in this context, because quite frankly, the focus is going to have to be on the workforce and the well-being of the workforce. And while the business is going and the business has to understand and rethink its goals and its strategy, HR has got to be at the table, and HR is at the table to ensure that there is alignment with our employees and where they are, and mentally where they are from a skills standpoint, and ensuring that it all comes back together during the pandemic and post-pandemic. And so again, I want to just walk through giving you some examples of, and this is just a drop in the bucket, some examples of what HR could be thinking about during our current time of being in this pandemic. So, even just communication. ramping up communication. It's not like nobody else, but nobody communicates. It's not like HR is the only one that communicates. But now we have to be very purposeful with our communications because our employees are in a delicate state. You have individuals who are anxious. You have individuals who are in a position where they're unsure of their safety. And so this is a very different world. And so organizations have to put a primacy on communication. They've got to ramp up the volume, the frequency, and the transparency in order for our employees to feel safe so that they can be productive. And the question of how do you even maintain your organizational culture? If everybody is still remote, do you not have a culture anymore? Who focuses on that? How do you maintain engagement? There was a survey that went out in April, and 2 out of 3 employers say that morale and engagement are huge challenges right now. And you can see why. People have other concerns. In addition to their job, they have family concerns, they have children. There's all kinds of issues with what am I going to do with my kids if I have younger kids? I'm homeschooling, I still have responsibilities at work. There's a lot of things that are pulling at people right now. And so if an organization is still having their employees remotely work, or if they're trying to have them return back to work, what does that mean? What types of communications need to be sent out to make employees feel comfortable about that? Then, if we're looking at learning and development, remember I said that was one of our courses that's a requirement of the major. Learning and development. How are we going to ensure going forward that our employees are going to have the requisite skills? Well, there was a skills gap in many of the industries prior to the pandemic. So if everybody's working remotely, what is that going to do for organizations that were already struggling to ensure that their employees had skills? Well, enter technology, but it can't be just your regular old type of boring click here, sit, watch a video type of training. If we really want to ensure our organizations can take advantage of technology to reskill and upskill their employees, then that's something that has to be a purposeful effort. You have to understand what technology is available. I have here that, even virtual reality, depending on the industry, depending on what your job is. I mean, these are things that we need to start thinking about and thinking about very quickly, to be honest. And then you have here, so if I start in the left-hand corner there, benefits. Remember I said comp and benefits, that's one of the courses that's required for the major. I'm not even talking about the compensation aspect right now in terms of how are we looking at the decisions that employers have had to make with regards to layoffs and furloughs and cutting salaries and those kinds of things. But if we just even look at benefits, for instance, furloughed workers. Furloughed workers have insurance plans. Do they continue their insurance plans? Can they? If you look at benefits, what types of benefits are going to be important to individuals now? Probably those that have to deal with health and well-being more so than others that weren't the focus just a year ago. And so someone has to think through that and what will be important to their employees, because well-being is basically very important. If we talk about hiring, remember there's a recruitment and selection course that's required. Talking about hiring, well, sure, we've done virtual hiring before, haven't we? Well, not like we're going to have to do now. There are still jobs available, and they are still hiring. There are jobs that may no longer be needed, but there are going to be new jobs as a result of this pandemic that will be created. But how do organizations recruit now? Are we going to have remote workforces? What does that look like? Those are the types of questions that HR is going to have to deal with. And then if we just look at policies, well, right now, whoever in an organization is responsible for ensuring the process and policies are in writing is having an interesting time, because any policies that were in place that had to do with employees are having to be revisited. And then policies that we never thought we'd have to write, we do have to write. For instance, what's the policy on returning back to work and all the elements that involve that? What are we going to do with paid and unpaid time off and leave? There's so many different elements to ensuring the workforce has the information that they need, and there's going to be consistency in how things are done, that policy writing and drafting policies for things you never knew you had to, it's going to be important. And to be quite honest, I can even link this a little bit into our employment law aspect, because if not done, or either not done correctly, you kind of sometimes leave yourself open to some lawsuits. And I always say that HR is your first line of defense against legal issues. And so just some of the things that are important to HR right here. Okay, any questions on that? Okay. So I wanted to just take a step back and revisit, again, going back into the HR major. You know, you can be a generalist or you can be a specialist. And this is just an example of some of the positions, if you can see that there, that you can, in terms of your occupation. This is from the Bureau of Labor Statistics. And so that those jobs, if you're wondering, you might be saying, well, they aren't even hiring. Actually, they are, especially in HR. I did a quick search just this morning just to see what kinds of HR positions are still open and still available, and there are new ones being posted every day. And so HR and the projections of the number of positions that will be available is still in place, even in this pandemic, and apparently even more so. And if we look here, I think it's 2 slides down, but I have a slide that just kind of gives you a feel for the progression and projection of the major. But if you are wondering about HR as a career, this gives you a highlight on some of the areas and the growth that's projected for each of those areas. So a comp and benefits specialist, projected growth, and this is over your average job, mind you. Projected growth 6%, HR manager 7%, 9% for training specialists, 5%. And so this is for the next 10 years, the projection of HR professionals in those jobs in those areas is projected to grow. And as you can see there, HR specialists are ranked among top 100 best jobs for 2020. So that is just a small reason as to why Stetson felt like this is an area that we wanted to jump into. Okay, and I think my last slide here actually just talks about that progression, but specific to the greater Orlando area. You can see there the labor market, 17.89% growth compared to the total labor market. And if we're talking about the 35% of those jobs, we're looking at the graduates. We're not talking about somebody who's been in the field for like 10, 15 years. We're talking about those job openings that our graduates can fill. Okay, so I did a lot of talking. I'm really hoping that was useful to you all. I can go into details about anything that you'd like to, but that's all I have for you today. Does anybody have any questions?
So before we get into the questions, I'll give everybody a minute. I know it takes sometimes a minute for them to pop up. So while we have time for questions at the end, feel free to drop them in the chat box. Really quickly, before we get to those, I am going to drop a few things in the chat box right now. I know it's a lot. I just threw at everybody, but I'll explain really quickly. The first link that you'll see in there is actually tomorrow night we'll be back for another Inside the Classroom with another faculty member, Lou Paris. He's going to talk all things entrepreneurship for us, so if you want to register for that, that's the first link. The second link in there is our webinar interest form. Like I said, feel free to leave us some feedback from tonight's event or any other events you've been a part of from our office. Let us know what you'd like to see maybe in the future. The next two, check out our website and update your alumni profile. And then the last link there is if you want to learn more about the HR major or minor at Stetson, that link will take you to that. And then we did also have a few questions get submitted beforehand tonight. And one of those, maybe hopefully we can get answered, is and I know we talked about even a little tonight about even the potential of student organizations coming from this program and everything, but after going through this program, or when students see this new program now, what do you think, Dr. Greene, what are the students going to get out of this program that they might not get out of HR classes or an HR major or minor somewhere else?
That's a good question. I think that one of the things that Stetson and Stetson faculty in particular bring to the table would be that high touch program feel. We are invested in ensuring that our students are qualified to meet the needs of industry. And so much so that the industry professionals that I mentioned, those practitioners, we've got them lined up really waiting to ensure that this program is a success and that we can make sure that our students have access to their expertise and knowledge. And so I think the combination, there are lots of HR programs out there, but I do truly believe that the network that we've established with our HR practitioners is bar none, and I really feel like I'm excited to get our students connected with them. And so the combination, faculty dedication to ensuring that we have the actual skill set to be successful, combined with the practitioners, I think that gives us a little bit of a sweet spot in ensuring that our students are going to be qualified.
Yes, that's awesome. I'm so excited for you guys to get this launched. I can tell just in your voice how excited you are about it. So I'm really excited for you all. And then another one that I was kind of thinking about as we went through this tonight is, so with the pandemic and anything else that might be going on current event wise, how are you all able to kind of transform what you're going to talk about in the classroom around what's going on in the world right now?
Well, that's a good question. It'll be easy for us. Everywhere we turn, there's an example of how to apply an HR-related topic to the workplace. You can even, if you just did a Google search on anything that has to do with employees and what employees are going through, questions that employees are having, issues that companies never thought they would have to resolve. Who's dealing with that? How are we going to deal with it? I mean, people are having to come up with solutions on the fly, and many of these solutions are going to be coming from informed HR professionals that are going to be at the forefront of helping companies move forward. And so, at this point, reality is a case study for human resources. It's everything, all things employees. Workforce related is HR related, and so I think that students may actually get a little tired. They say, okay, this is what's happening today. How are we going to address it? How would you address it? And it's going to be similar to a simulation every day in class, because we'll have just so much to relate to our topics, regardless of the class, to be quite honest. Any of those 6 required courses that I mentioned to you, we'll have an opportunity to apply it to, our current reality. Did that make sense?
Yes, it did. And that is awesome. So we'll open it up for if anybody has any final questions or comments, feel free to drop those in. And before we do go, I just want to say thank you to everybody for taking the time to join us. Thank you to Olivia in the office for helping put this stuff together. And of course, thank you, Dr. Greene, for taking the time to put this presentation together and join us tonight. We in the alumni office really appreciate you taking the time to join us tonight. It was very awesome. Really good information too.
Thank you, and thank you everyone for joining. Thank you, Olivia.
And before we close it out, yes, thank you. Lots of nice messages coming in. We appreciate you all for joining. And just so everybody knows, this was recorded tonight as well. So once we get the recording back from our marketing team, we'll be sure to share it with you all. And if anybody wants to rewatch it, you'll be able to do that. But again, thank you all for joining. I really appreciate it. And I hope everybody has a great night.
Thanks, everyone.